whenever you're ready.
Just a second.
We're going to three. We're going
Three
to
to five. We're jumping ahead to third.
Oh! Yeah, they all look the same.
That'll turn them upside down.
I'm sure he can use process.
Okay, today is September 25, 2023. It is about 6:06 p.m., and this is a meeting of the Streets and Sidewalks Committee. To my right is Councilwoman Lynn Snee, and Councilman Samuel Pierce is absent this evening. I'm Bob Phillips, the chair. We're here to hear a staff recommendation on an MVRPC Federal IIJA grant application for the West Main Street and Experiment Farm Road intersection improvement project. And Mrs. Rhodes, you're going to provide the staff report.
Yeah, and this intersection we came to you a couple weeks ago and presented some potential alignment or intersection improvements. From that, we got a nod to proceed with the roundabout, and we are now applying for federal funding. So it's about West Main Street, or at West Main Street, Experiment Farm and South Stanfield Road. We've been looking at this intersection since 2019, 2020. 2019 is actually when they started the intersection evaluation and looked at traffic counts. American Structure Point has been our consultant on that. We've talked to several different groups. We've talked to ODOT, District 7 Safety. They said it probably wouldn't score very high, so that's why we're coming to you for an STP application. It wouldn't score very high safety-wise because the accidents at the intersection are more property damage and thankfully not injury or fatalities. So the project would just be redoing the configuration of that intersection. All in construction as well as engineering, we estimate it to be right around $5 million. We'd be asking for about 50% to maximize our points, about 50% of grant dollars, which the max you can actually offer or request through SCP is $3 million, so we're asking for about 2.6. And if awarded, the money would be available as early as state fiscal year 2028, which would be July of 27, but they may push us to 2029 depending on funding availability because we are asking for so many funds. So the applications are due October 11th. That's why we're here, and we are also requesting emergency legislation.
So what you're saying about the scoring aspect as to the accidents that we have had, we still have had a high number of accidents.
Yes.
They just don't meet the criteria for injury.
Yes,
and
severe, yeah.
For the
and so that's why it didn't score very well from a safety standpoint, yes. But actually, as we go down through the STP, the Surface Transportation Program scoring, this intersection is identified as a high crash intersection in the MVRPC area. So we actually increase some of our points because of that. Got it. Thank you.
As far as the last committee meeting of the whole, I was not present, but I did monitor that during the meeting. The comments that were made by all of the council folks at that point were very on point. And one of the other questions near the end was the education of the public component. And this may be an extremely hard question to answer at the moment, and if you can't, that's perfect, whatever. But how are we considering this educational component? I mean, because I'm going to go on a limb and say that 90% of our drivers have been through the roundabout downtown or Dorset McCaig and or other roundabouts in the general area. I'm just finding an answer to that.
Yeah. So it's not like you mentioned, it's not like this is the first roundabout. It will be organized or laid out a little bit differently because it'll be multi-lanes.
Right.
But in talking with a couple of councilmen after the last committee of the whole, they actually made a comment, and I don't know that I was driving in Troy at that time, but that downtown, the roundabout, or circle or however you reference it, was dual lanes at that point. So I think we've seen it before. It just maybe isn't as high of a volume of traffic as out there at West Main and Stanfield Experiment Farm. We've also talked to other cities in the area that have implemented roundabouts, and they have actually set up kind of a mock roundabout. We're obviously not to that detail yet, but we are entertaining those ideas, and we do have like Hobart Arena, for example. That's a large parking lot that's unused, except for special events that we can maybe set up something out there. I think also pavement markings and signage is an important thing to help people get through the intersection to figure out where they need to be, because one of the things, there's a couple of things that are important. One, to get the correct speed going through the intersection, but then two, to be in the correct lane before you get into the roundabout. So changing a lot of the confusion, a lot of the accidents, things like that, my understanding, occur when you're in the roundabout and you're trying to change lanes. So getting to that correct lane before. So if we aren't going to bid or aren't going to construction until fiscal year 28, which would be 2027, we got a little bit of time to kind of work up a plan for education as well as implement that plan for education.
So we have talked about adjusting the speed on West Main Street, but the speed would obviously need to be reduced prior to the entry to roundabouts. So have we come to any conclusion about what speeds need to be enforced or signed at that point, or near the point to maybe achieve that and educate prior to?
Yeah, so I'm not sure that we would be adjusting speed before the roundabout. It's more about the entry speed and just getting it down. So that's kind of why when you're going into a roundabout, you kind of do the meander or the jog, and they kind of maybe even tighten the lanes a little bit so that you will reduce your speed. So I'm not sure, we haven't necessarily looked at speed limits out there because they have been set. I'm sure there has been a study done with the 40 miles an hour being out there. I'm sure it took into account what people feel safe at driving. A heavy influence of speed limits is 85th percentile. So what is 85% of the traffic driving? And so that obviously would mean that they feel fairly comfortable driving that. So I don't know that we would adjust speed outside of it, but it may come up. We just haven't necessarily discussed that as we're looking at this intersection. The other thing I did want to point out, talking about getting people used to it, is we did earlier this year, council approved us to apply for an OPWC grant for the Adams Riverside Staunton Road intersection, and so we are applying for that, and so that would be a roundabout there as well. Right. So that would be a lot of good experience that you could achieve there in the next couple of years as well.
Okay. I don't have any other questions about this. Mrs. Steen?
Just a question, is this the only grant we expect to apply for this project?
Yeah, no. OPWC. So we just have to time it out appropriately for OPWC. That's typically a $600,000 grant, so it's much smaller. And then we have been in discussions with the Ohio Department of Development. It's not necessarily a grant application, my understanding. I haven't necessarily been involved personally in those meetings with ODOD, but my understanding is they do have funding potentially available for as it helps with development, and this intersection definitely helps with development of commercial industrial properties.
Thank you.
And then in addition to that, we do have tax increment financing funds from the Walmart project, Town and Park, that have been accumulating, so we have those resources and that can fund the gap as well.
Can we apply that to fixing the road from Shell Station through Walmart? We
have been in communications with Walmart, and actually they're supposed to be doing repairs as well as some paint striping out there. We've coordinated with them earlier this spring. They indicated the end of July. We got back with them at the end of July, and we're hearing that it's coming, but I do understand your concern.
Okay, thank you. No other questions up here. Any other council folks? Mr. Whitten.
Clarify. If I heard you right, we may not see the funding until 2029?
Yes.
Okay. At the committee of the whole meeting, I saw the projection that said in 10 years' time, that intersection is where the numbers start to get a little wonky on us.
Mm-hmm.
which it would, if it's 2029, and construction runs a year and a half, we're getting up close to those numbers. Is there any concern that we're kind of pushing out towards that?
No, I mean, it is what it is, kind of, when you're playing the funding game. We've been contemplating what to do with this intersection, and, you know, should we go the roundabout, and then we didn't really know what, once COVID hit, how much traffic was going to decrease, and maybe push out that 10-year time frame a little bit. Traffic has definitely bounced back. We will continue to monitor, and this intersection is always on ODOT's radar as well, because the ramps are so close. So they've helped us, like I said, retime it here recently, and I've made some comments to them, and the ODOT District 7 engineer really seems responsive, so to assist if we do need to kind of manage our timing or modify our timings to help us, especially if it's affecting her ramps. So, so it kind of is what it is, but we'll continue to monitor and see what we can do, if there's anything we can do in the short term.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include traffic counts or recounting, you know, what we have now, and re-looking at stats, you know, going forward because of time?
Sometimes,
in case that means anything needs to change on a design.
So we typically don't count intersections like every year, because traffic doesn't change very much from year to year. You make projections when you're doing the study like they did here, that I think they projected around 0.5 to 1%, I forget specifically for this study, of growth annually, and that seems pretty in line with this commercial area. So we probably wouldn't do any more counts, unless there was another large development that came that would kind of force us, or force them, maybe a commercial development or industrial development, to do counts. We'd take this information, especially because we just kind of renewed it in 2023 from the 2019 counts.
Gotcha, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Schilling, did you have a question?
Well, comment, but looking at the study, it seemed to me that most of the accidents were rear enders, and they were either early in the morning or later in the evening, which to me, living out there, that was not caused by the intersection design, but was probably caused by the sun, especially in the morning. I mean, when you're coming down on West Main Street and that sun is just starting to peek up over the horizon, and so I mean, that's still going to be there no matter what we have as far as an intersection design. Would that be? I mean, the sun, the interference of the sun, people trying to see down the road is going to be there no matter what, right?
Yes, but I would doubt that the majority of the accidents occurred due to the sun. They probably occurred during peak commute times, which happens to be 7 to 9 a.m. in the morning, and then 4 to 6 in the afternoon. The rear enders is due to fast stopping. The rear enders is because somebody's turning at an intersection in front of you and you're not paying attention, and there's a lot of traffic, or 2 cars up is stopping, and you don't realize that until the person in front of you hits your brakes, and then it's too late for you to hit your brakes. So it's congestion. Rear enders are due to congestion, not necessarily weather.
Speed, inattention, and congestion.
Yeah.
Top 3 primary collision factors.
Yeah.
Any other council folks out there have any comment or question? Anyone else in the general public have any comment or question on this item?
If you're not going to start construction until 2029, 6 years from now, you may want to do it.
Steve, come on up to the microphone, please, so that this goes on record.
I'm Steve Hendrickson at 975 Dickerson. My question was, if we're not going to start construction until 2029, 6 years from now, before the bulldozers show up, you may want to do another count, just in case somebody decides to build a huge building out there or something else. We don't know what's going to happen. I understand you don't want to do it unless you have to, but let's not put our hand in the, let's not put our head in the sand thinking nothing's going to change.
Yeah. Well, we all the time are monitoring. Development department is
Don't do it until 2028.
No, well, but also by the time 2028 came around, we would have our design the roundabout isn't going to be maxed out on capacity in 20 years, even if we develop, we develop and we build in 2027, 2028, 2029. Even in 20 years, we're not going to be at capacity of our roundabout. That's one thing. Two,
That's assuming we don't build another Clopay out there or something else where you got 1,200 employees.
well, we'll be monitoring it, and if
Well,
at that
I
point...
understand that.
But if at that point, Clopay or somebody similar to that comes in, they would be doing a traffic intersection, so they'd be doing a traffic count, and they'd be showing us that we don't need any improvements to the roundabout that we're under design. So when I say monitoring, we'll be doing more than just like watching it from afar. We'll be monitoring, but we may not run the traffic counts if things grow gradually like they are now.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, what is your pleasure with this?
Move forward with emergency.
All right, it is unanimous with the committee that's here that we will move forward as staff is requesting with emergency. Any other items to come before the streets and sidewalks?
No, sir.
Then we are adjourned. Thank you all